subscribe to my channel, and while you're at it, click the bell to be notified of future videos. This block I'm calling County Roads, and it finishes at 12 inches. Here's the diagram, and here are 4 blocks set block to block. I found a picture of this quilt on Pinterest, and as usual, that happens with a lot on Pinterest, as you try to follow a link and either there isn't a link or the link goes nowhere or it's spam. So I have no idea what this quilt is actually called, who designed it, what. So if anybody knows, let me know. But when I saw this quilt, I had to laugh at myself because it reminded me of when I first started quilting. And I lived in a mostly rural county in Texas, and I lived in the biggest city actually in the county, and at that time I think there were only 30,000 people in that city. So I was driving to the neighboring city or town to visit another quilter. Her name was Kay. And this was the time when we didn't have GPS on our phone, and we just had the little Garmins or the TomToms that you put in your car, and you had to update them every so often or whatever. So I take off to go to her house. I put the information in, and I'm driving down these county roads, and there is nothing on the sides of the road except miles of pasture land or farmland. You know, I would see an occasional cow, maybe a tractor, and then all of a sudden the road would just, if you're on this road here, it would just stop and make a 90-degree turn, and you had to turn. So I did that probably 4 or 5 times, just going down the road for a mile or so and stopping and making a 90-degree turn. And I kept thinking, oh my gosh, what have I gotten myself into? And it finally dawned on me that these were probably old homestead farmlands or pasture lands that they built the county roads between the landowners, you know, boundary lines, or however they did that, because it would change. Every time you'd make this turn, it would change. So I had to laugh, and when I got to Kay's house, I told her about all these county roads. I was making all these 90-degree turns, and she laughed, and she goes, well, when you leave, just come out here and take the first right, and then go such and such, and take the next left, and you'll be on the major highway. So I took that way home, but this is what I instantly thought about when I saw this, all these 90-degree turns on these county roads. So that's why I call it County Roads. Thank you for letting me indulge that memory. There are 6 patches here, and this would be probably really good for strip piecing, and I'll show you why. Patch A is a 2-inch by 12-inch finished rectangle. So here we're cutting 2.5-inch segments. Patch B is a 2.5-inch by 10.5-inch rectangle. We're also cutting 2.5-inch segments. And patch C is a 2-inch finished square, so we cut 2.5 inches. Patch D is a 2-inch by 6-inch finished rectangle. Again, we're cutting 2.5-inch strips. And patch E is a 6-inch finished square. And patch F is a 2-inch by 8-inch finished rectangle. Again, we're cutting 2.5-inch segments, or strips. So if you look at, here are the cutting instructions for each of the fabrics. If you look at the background fabric, which is this, my little roads here, each one is cut from 2.5 inches. So if you have one strip of 2.5 inches times width of fabric, you can cut all these pieces, A, B, D, and F. And that's all the 4 pieces of these background, these my county roads here. So this would be a good, if you have strips you want to use, either matching or coordinating or low volume strips, whatever. And I wrote that here too if you just want to use strip piecing. Here are my fabrics, but I'm going to make this quilt, and I found this background fabric that I've had for a long, long time. I cut it into fat quarters a while back, just thinking I would use it more. And I'm going to make a 35 block quilt, and I'll need about 10 of these fat quarters. You can cut all of these roads, the background patches, from one strip. And from one fat quarter, I can get 3.5 blocks. Get back over here. I know I'm all over the place now, but here are the cutting instructions for each of the fabrics. Patch C is 2.5-inch squares that we cut, and we need 9 assorted. Good way to use up your leftover jelly roll strips. And then patch E is a 6.5-inch cut square. To piece it, just look at these diagrams here. They're numbered 1 through 6, and just add the pieces. It's kind of like a log cabin style block, how you add strips to the side, then the top, then the side, then the top, and to finish your block. And then just look at this diagram for reference. Here is a full size, I call it full size quilt, just meaning it's a quilt top. These have 35 blocks, set 5 across and 7 down. This finishes at 60 inches by 84 inches. What I have been doing lately, since we're in the last month of this block of the day, I'm preparing for next year because I want to do more scrap quilts next year. I won't be doing blocks of the day. I might do an occasional block or two, but mostly I want to concentrate on completing quilt top. And my personal goal is to get rid of a bunch of scraps, and you probably saw that in an earlier video. So what I'm going to do is, this will be one of the quilts that we finish next year, and I'll go in depth of showing you your options, how to make different size quilts, and how to use up your scraps. And that's the kind of thing I want to do for next year, is to concentrate on actually finishing quilt tops. So here are my patches for this. I cut these from a fat quarter, and from the fat quarter you'll get 7 strips like this. This is 2.5 inches by 21 inches. And then I'll just cut my pieces off of that. And here are my 9 assorted 2.5-inch squares and my 6.5-inch square. And for the piecing, we're going to first piece these squares. We're going to piece a set of 4 and then a set of 5. It doesn't matter, just mix them all up and stitch these together and press, stitch these together and press. Now we have our 4 square strip done and our 5 square strip done. And we'll just follow the steps 1 through 6 to piece the block together. Thank you for watching.